Welcome back to Montana this morning. The time now is 6:44 on this Thursday. Well, our top story this Thursday morning, if you ever find yourself in a situation to call 911, you are going to see a difference in the response. Billings first responders are trying to save resources by changing the way they handle 911 medical calls. Until this week, a fire truck was dispatched to every single one of these calls, even if it wasn't necessary. Now they may only send an ambulance. Officials say this will free up firefighters to be ready to do what they do best, fight fires. Dispatchers will ask a series of questions to the person on the other end of the 911 call to determine who needs to show up to help. But for this to work, they need a little help from the callers.
Try and take a deep breath. Please answer our questions. Please cooperate with the caller. And please know that as you're doing that, things are happening in the background in a way that you can't see.
Those with the Billings Fire Department say they expect this move to ease wait times and prevent backlogs. Former employees at the state prison in Deer Lodge say workers there are not being treated fairly. The former correctional officers claim the prison is grossly understaffed and the people are underpaid. They say officers are forced to work long overtime hours. One of the former employees remembers the time he found a coworker asleep on the job after working multiple shifts in a row. They also allege the prison had a toxic culture and say they experienced bullying from management.
People yelling at other staff in front of other staff, that's not right. I even heard them yell at staff in front of inmates, and that's really wrong.
The union that represents the correctional officers has been in contract negotiations with the Department of Corrections and has brought up these complaints during the negotiations. And this is what Department of Corrections Director Brian Gukin had to say about the department. It generally does not comment on allegations from former employees. I would note, however, that we value our employees, are committed to ensuring a safe, healthy workplace, and will continue to negotiate in good faith with the union to reach an acceptable agreement. A Missoula pastor and part-time real estate agent is facing an ethics complaint. He chose to withdraw his church from helping a food bank that distributed gay rights flyers. The local realtors group is accusing him of hate speech towards the LGBTQ community, and the pastor is fighting that claim. He's asking a judge to void the group's rule, which prohibits hate speech whether on the job or not. If the pastor is found to have violated the rule, he could be fined or denied access to the organization's listing service, making it impossible for him to continue as an agent. His attorney alleges the realtor group is going after Christians.
The realtor's hate speech rule is intended to purge Christians from the real estate business. If you are a Christian who believes the way tens of millions of American Christians do, that homosexuality is wrong, there's simply no way that you can participate as a realtor with the kind of hate speech prohibition that exists.
An attorney for the Missoula Realtors Group says it will respond after it's reviewed the lawsuit. There is a case making national headlines. Kyle Rittenhouse took the stand in his homicide trial, saying he acted in self-defense in the shootings that left 2 men dead and at a protest in Kenosha, Wisconsin last year. The 18-year-old broke down and began sobbing during questioning. The trial was also stopped twice after a line of questioning by the prosecutor angered the judge. Defense attorneys asked for a mistrial, which the judge is considering. If it's granted, Rittenhouse would walk free without being charged again. A U.S. District Court just delivered another setback to former President Donald Trump in his efforts to withhold the White House records from a congressional committee investigating the January 6th Capitol riot. The judge denied Mr. Trump's request to pause her own ruling from a day earlier as he appeals the decision. The former president claims the documents are protected by executive privilege. Young children could face another health risk due to the pandemic. 22 million infants around the world did not get their measles vaccine last year. The CDC says 3 million fewer babies received their measles vaccine in 2020 compared to the year before, and just 70% received both doses. A 95% vaccination rate is needed to best prevent an outbreak. The health agencies say a measles vaccination effort scheduled for 23 different countries last year had to be postponed due to the pandemic. Fossil fuels like coal and natural gas have been the main source of energy needed to heat our homes. But President Biden's economic spending plans, which could get a vote in the House next week, calls for more wind turbines. Reporter Joe St. George explains how wind projects can help small towns across America.
It's windy. It feels like a fall day in Texas.
Alito Castillo is taking us for a walk, and while there are plenty of windy cities around the country,
We have an awesome wind turbine.
it's doubtful wind is as much a part of life in your town as it is here in Taft, Texas.
As you can see from my hair blowing around, there's a lot of wind.
Castillo's family has lived here for generations, but these wind turbines have only been around 10 years or so. In total, there are around 200 of them, which averages out to be about one turbine for every 15 people who live in this small town. Each one's around 400 feet. That's taller than the Statue of Liberty.
We are taking something that is provided to us naturally and using it for energy.
2020 produced a record amount of new wind power installations in our country. Even in the middle of a pandemic, it accounted for 42% of all new sources of energy last year. But the extent in which wind production grows even more,
so this climate crisis is an enormous opportunity,
is very much dependent on whether President Biden gets his spending package through Congress. That bill is separate from the infrastructure bill, which has already passed. Currently, it contains $235 billion worth of tax incentives for renewable energy, meant to encourage companies to make more investments in projects like this.
It's an industry that supports not only the landowner.
Sergio Contreras is with Rio Grande Valley Partnership. He says wind turbine construction doesn't just create jobs in places where there are few, it creates new forms of tax revenue. The county government where these were built has received over $40 million from the operator since 2006. It's also transforming education.
So the community colleges have implemented brand new programs to provide this workforce. A 2-year program will produce a worker that's going to be paid about $55,000.
As for Castillo,
The tank farms over there.
she admits the town isn't entirely relying on wind. After all, Texas is still drilling plenty of oil. But she says if her town can contribute just a little more to the environment, your town can too.
If Texas can do it, anybody can do it.
In Taft, Texas, I'm Joe St. George.
Thank you so much, Joe. Now, here's the follow-up to a story that is generating a lot of conversation in the Billings community. Many residents are excited about the new outdoor concert venue coming to the Ybor district, but now some are curious, where will I park? The good news is parking is free in the Ybor, but with a pavilion having a capacity of 3,000 spots, those could fill up fast. And that's why those who own the new venue are kicking around the idea of offering a shuttle service to get people to a concert. Planning is still in the early stages, but the hope is it will all be figured out when shows start next summer. And some good news for parents of young children attending MSUB. The university is offering an additional $200,000 in scholarships to help cover the cost of daycare. The extra money comes from the U.S. Department of Education. Sandra Ramirez is one of the parents the scholarship will help. She's working toward a degree in criminal justice.
The program will help me pay for childcare, so then I still have money to go to college. Know that I have a good childcare to take care of my kids, so I can go to college and do my work and pursue my dream.
There are 3 daycare centers that accept the scholarship money: Cradles to Crayons Preschool and Daycare, St. John's United Center for Generations, and Wonder Years Preschool and Child Care Center. It is Veterans Day, and we're saying thank you to all who served our country, both living and those who have now passed away. Q2's Casey Conlon has the story of a Montana Marine who went missing in action in World War II, but is now finally back home and will be laid to rest today.
Thousands will gather in cemeteries across the country Veterans Day to honor the American service members killed in action. Almost 300,000 were lost 80 years ago during World War II, including Billings native Jack Earl Hill. But for the first time, his family will be able to grieve in person.
When you bring their bones back in, we found you, we've got you, you're on your way home right to your family, is the most incredible thing.
Jordan Wimbush is an osteoarchaeologist for History Flight, a group dedicated to reuniting KIA service members with their loved ones. It's a rewarding, never-ending job.
How many men and women are actually missing in action, and it's over 81,000 still today.
In November 1943, over 1,000 Marines were killed in the Battle of Tarawa on a small island about halfway between Hawaii and Australia. 21-year-old Private First Class Jack Earl Hill was one of them. Surviving Marines buried the dead in shallow graves, hoping they would be discovered shortly after the war and sent home to their grieving families. Approximately 33 of them, including Hill, were buried in a trench referred to as Row D. It wouldn't be found until March 2019.
There's 41 American cemeteries on this 1 square mile of land. The row D group that we were looking for was actually buried under a house that had a concrete foundation. So that concrete slab protected these men, but it also inhibited us from finding them for so many years.
Wimbush's job had just begun. Her specialty is using the bones for identification. Finally, on June 26, 2020, DNA samples from one of Hill's cousins confirmed a match, putting an end to decades of uncertainty.
You hear the stories of the family members that are just like, thank you so much for bringing my brother home. Those are the ones that you're like, whew, you're very welcome. It's our honor to do it.
Jack Earl Hill, the son of Earl and Nellie, and a former Custer High School football star, will be laid to rest in Seattle, Washington, in front of family. Casey Conlon, MTN News.